Anybody here who's played Payday, that's pretty much half of the game of Payday is just hold out until you're done and can get all the cash out of that place.
Oh, I absolutely will leave you to die, just for the record.
You're
Dane
the
has
betrayer.
other priorities.
I want to escape, y'all. We got the car, fit to the roof. Let's go.
I mean, yeah.
Leo went back for more loot. That's not my fault.
Just a reminder, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Different series that require a spoiler warning will be in the description.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
How's everyone enjoying Treefort?
Yeah, huge shout out to Treefort. Huge shout out to Hackfort, Podfort. Let's hear
Other
it.
forts? Food fort?
Every fort.
Kid fort?
But like Podfort specifically.
Yeah.
We do love Podfort.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all here.
True.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is Leo, the geek, also known as the Geek Scorpio, and this is our event for Treefort this year for 2025. And we're going to talk about the storytelling elements that is The Last Stand. Real quick, these are guys next to me have been with me on my podcast for a while now, so some quick introduction of that. My name is Leo. I'll be your host this evening. And over to my left over here is going to be...
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben. I go by El Penguin on Gaming Theaters Presents. I'm a struggling muscle artist that inspires others through being a buff nerd.
And over to their left is going to be...
Hi, my name is Dean Dane. I'm an award-winning DM, and I love stories.
And over to my right is going to be...
My name is Liz. I go by Zombie Hand. I work a lot on GTP art and cosplay.
All right. Yeah. So that being all said, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
That being all said, we are a podcast that talks about storytelling and sometimes video games and storytelling and video game elements. So in this case, what we're talking about is The Last Stand, which has gone to be almost ubiquitous to many video games, but also to different movies, books, and stories for it. Then most of what A Last Stand is two different parts for it. The first one is if the story itself leads to the buildup of where one force, usually a last stand or just a town or something that's under siege, when that location's under siege, it locks that place down. And the rest of the story is how they're either going to survive the day, the night, the week, or make their way out of it or find a way to escape. The point of that one is that there is not a way. Exiting and leaving is, if you have that option, we got to take it. But until then, we've got to hold it down. The other type of a last stand is when it's done as a climax to a film or a climax to a story. They're kind of ubiquitous, but they also fill in. Because the problem is, as a last stand story, there isn't a time frame for how long your story needs to be a last stand. So, for example, a popular movie back in the 60s and 70s, Night of the Living Dead. The majority of the film is everyone who's in that house holding the line until morning, until daybreak, and seeing how long they can last. But in other films, such as, and this is a spoiler-heavy podcast for everybody who hasn't figured this one out yet.
So many spoilers.
So many spoilers.
All the spoilers.
Not all of them good stories, but that's a different story altogether. But we're talking about like other ones such as Tales from the Crypt. They had a movie in the 90s called Demonknight. It's an amazingly fun film, but the last stand on that takes up roughly about 70% of the movie. And then you have weirder, larger epics where if you go with, say, Marvel's Endgame for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the last stand is roughly about the last third of the movie is just this big fight that happens. So your last stand of your storyline can be the climax of it, can be just the entire story, but most of the ones that I want to talk about today is when it's most of the story on that. And we've got stories from that one mostly out of history. The Battle of Thermopylae, 300, which is Battle of Thermopylae. But there's also other ones such as the Alamo. What was the other one that you found?
The fall of Tenochtitlan, that is the capital of the Aztec Empire, which was also caused by another last stand.
Started with one last stand, we went with another last stand on that one. But other games have used the last stand as sort of a different take on that one. If anybody here who's played Borderlands or the Borderlands series, the last stand is your last chance to try to get yourself up after you've been knocked down.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're taken down. But yeah, so that's the majority of it. Your friends, your teams, or whoever that's there has to hold out. That's the point. Is there something coming? I don't know, but that's the best way to get through this whole mess. A typical Last Stand storyline will usually have one person who's trying to keep everyone together, and then they get to make sure that everyone is trying to get through, and not everybody trusts each other one way or another. If you've ever seen it, this is John Carpenter's first major movie. It's called Assault on Precinct 13. They had a remake in 2015. It's an amazing movie, but it's essentially just this lead up where this man who watches her daughter get taken out by a street gang, and on the street gang is going to stop at nothing to chase their father down, who is just hiding out in this police station, and that's already closed down. And they do the thing that the director does, which a lot of these movies don't do, is that there's parts and pieces of the storyline where they make half the holdout is they make everything look the same. Everything looks fine, to the point they use a bunch of cars to like assault the precinct, and then they put all the cars right back when they're done with the assault, exactly where everything was beforehand. So that way, if someone walks by, it's the same five cars that's been parked there this whole time.
Yeah, one of the aspects I think that I really enjoy about the Last Stand story, right, is that typically speaking, there is some sort of an internal betrayal from somebody amongst the group, right? We see this in 300. We see this, it's a little bit less so, but in Seven Samurai, Akira Kurosawa's film. And I find that very interesting, right? Where you have this element of we're all in this together. We have to hold out until X happens, right? Until we defeat them, until the sunrise comes, until they get chased away, whatever the situation might end up being, right? But inevitably, there is somebody amongst the ranks who doesn't quite believe in the same win condition, I guess you could say, or sees a different out, right? So in Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, we do find out that, the purported samurai, one of them is not actually a samurai. A little bit of a different betrayal in that regard, right? They're not harming the group necessarily, but they are kind of banished from the group for a time. In 300, we've got the betrayal to Xerxes, which then opens up a gap in the formation, leading to, loss of resources, loss of people, etc. And I do find that very interesting that in a lot of these, right, there's the zombie movie where somebody gets bit and they don't tell anybody, and then they end up biting somebody else, and it's this huge thing, right, where we see the sort of stalwart defense sort of fall. I find that aspect very interesting, that it is prevalent in a lot of these stories.
Yeah, so you're always having the one who wants their way kind of out of that. Not always, though. Sometimes. True. And that sort of depends on your take. When you move this genre from a book or a movie, but you go into a video game, since you're the players, you want to hang out and do what you can, very few of them will let you have a betrayal. You just hold the line until the end of the night and see how far it gets. Anybody here who's played Payday, that's pretty much half of the game of Payday, is just hold out until you're done and can get all the cash out of that place.
Oh, I absolutely will leave you to die, just for the record.
You're
Dane
the
has
betrayer.
other priorities.
I want to escape, y'all. We got the car, fit to the roof. Let's go.
I mean, yeah.
Leo went back for more loot. That's not my fault. I will say too, though, kind of to push back on that a little bit gently, right? In Red Dead Redemption 2, there is sort of a last stand. It does not take place at the climax, I don't think, or at the end of the game, but it is sort of a pivotal moment in the game where you are sort of holed up in this building and defending it from an aggressing force. I'm not going to spoil it in this case because I think everybody should play that game. But I do find it kind of interesting that, there isn't really like a objective other than hold out, right? And there's not really an avenue of escape in that game, in that scene rather.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
And this is kind of stretching the guidelines a little bit, but mid-game of Resident Evil 4, you have the segment where Leon is in a house with Luis and Ashley's hiding, and you have to fortify the building against the zombie. Don't shake your head, Sammy. It's kind of like a last stand, but it's midway through the game. Mm-hmm. So you just have to hold out for a certain number of minutes before you can continue on. But it is barricading windows and doors and trying desperately to stay alive. So many grenades need to be thrown.
Yeah, how do we feel about kind of, I guess, micro last stands, right? Where it doesn't take place it is a pivotal moment of the game or of the storyline, but it isn't sort of the end all be all necessarily. It could have been, right? But obviously Leon triumphs if the player is adept enough, which I am not. To overcome the challenge, I know I need to get good. I'm sorry. I've been working on it all my life. All right, it's an ongoing process. But I do kind of find it interesting where this doesn't take place at the climax of the game or doesn't take place at the end, right? But is sort of, and the stakes, I would say for Leon, they're higher. For the player, they're lower, right?
Yeah.
Than some of these other climactic last stands that we've already talked about. So how do we feel about sort of micro last stand, mini last stand?
I think micro last stand or mini last stand is a good way to describe that, because so your last stand story in general is usually that's the climax, the peak.
Yeah.
But for that one, this is why it kind of stretches the rules, because it is a pivotal moment for that moment, but then we go back to the way the regular game goes for it. But that's not the same for most video games. The Left 4 Dead series, the end of several chapters. What do you want to say it?
I was gonna bring up Left 4 Dead, which I also stole from Dane, but
Steal everything.
Steal everything. So, that's payday. Anyway.
True.
But with that, you bump into a case where where the climax of several of those stories, even though it doesn't finish the whole game, it's still a climax at the point for it. Resident Evil 4, on the other hand, that one is just more of this is a last stand moment.
Yeah, it's just kind of like point B or C along the way. It's not the whole thing. Or even what you're building up to. It kind of, it even just shows up like, oh, there's a house. We can hold up there for a second. And then you have to spend like 7 minutes. Or
that
4
second
minutes.
lasts an hour in the game. I was like, this was supposed to be a rest point. No, this is a survival point right now, bro.
Mm-hmm. But that also, if you want the earliest video game based example of what a last stand video game is, it is the oldest example of that is Missile Command. Way back in the early 80s, when you are just 3 towers shooting down every missile that you can because you have to hold this point. If you don't know the weird short story about that, the guy who designed the game based it upon this sort of relationship with world politics back then, and he had a mental breakdown when he finally figured out, no, I have just invented a game that cannot be beaten, and that is what the point of this game is. But it is a last stand for the most part because you last out for it. Right, it also video games in the arcade games in the 80s were just designed with, you just keep playing until you stop.
So it was the Kobayashi Maru of video games.
There are some people who've beaten that, though.
Yeah,
be careful.
There is a way to get to the title.
It was Kirk. It was Captain Kirk.
Twice.
He beat Missile Command.
Yeah, true.
Captain Kirk.
Canon event.
Yeah. Anyway, but we also have from this, if you want a weirder example of that, StarCraft. Back in the day, StarCraft, when it first came out, had it's a mod for it that you can find. It's called Whiskey Outpost, which is a play on Starship Troopers, which is you're basically the last guys in that giant last stand in the middle of Starship Troopers. But the movie doesn't end from that point. But it is like the coolest part of the whole movie is watching them just hold out as long as they can just to get picked up. But you can play that one, and it lets you pick up ammo and get the things to keep going. If you fail to keep yourself updated with new ammo or such, the game ends, and that's it. You're just like to do that. From that, though, people who played that spawned off to work on tower defense games, and the original tower defense games were all mods for StarCraft. And after so many of them, now we have a whole new game genre, which is just tower defense, which is ultimately they keep coming. You hold out until they stop in some cases.
I have a question.
Sure.
This also might be a stretch and not fit, but how about R.E.P.O?
Which R.E.P.O?
The one that we've been playing.
Oh, R.E.P.O,
because I know we're kind of trying to get
I was
out.
going to say the genetic opera. I don't think that's the last stand.
I also went down there. I was like,
That
are we
one
turning
is
this to a
also
musical?
very
Because I don't remember
stretchy.
Last Stand in that thing.
Classic film, but
Great watch.
I don't
kind of
remember
like-
a last stand.
Maybe
We're
next
trying
podcast.
to defend against It's well, I guess it's a
No,
little
that's
more
an
fez-
escape.
All
That
right.
is you just leaving. You're not. No one stays. So in the game, Reaper, for those who don't know it, it's very new. But it is you play as a bunch of little tiny robots trying to steal a bunch of loot and treasure, and then make up a quota. But once the quotas have been fulfilled, you have to leave the place as fast as you can, because then every monster in the room will try to find you and take you down. So no, because you're Last Stand, you're holding out. This one, you're just leaving.
All right.
What do you think about the pivotal moment where it's not a person versus a group, or a group of people versus a group of people, but it's more of like a person versus a machine, shall we say? So less so in a Terminator fashion, but more so in like a countdown, right? Say someone's trying to defuse a bomb, or they're trying to stop something bad from happening. There's a timer ticking down shortly. How do you think that ranks up, Leo?
It doesn't, because it's a different method. That's a countdown. That's
Well, I
things
guess
are
that's
timing
true.
off. This is so the way you think of a Last Stand story is more of a siege, an onslaught. A large group of force is coming to you, is coming at the opposing. So they can be stopped, but they're just but it's only temporarily. Whereas if you defuse the bomb or having some kind of countdown, once you've met that conditions, it's either you stopped it or you don't.
Interesting.
Yeah, countdowns differ a lot more of just a big make it or break it, because at least with Last Stand, there's a good chance that not everyone is going to make it out. So if we go back to Night of the Living Dead, it was literally everyone in there trying their best to survive, just for one dude to live at the end and step out, and then he got gunned down because of racism.
The original Night of the Living Dead is
Yeah.
is a take on that. If you ever want to watch it, the remake not so much in the 80s, but that's the quintessential of that.
Right. But not just that as Last Stand, but actually if we were to go out to back to battles and stuff like that. So I'm gonna go back to more historical ones, so like the Fall of Tenochtitlan. That whole empire is designed for a Last Stand, because you have a whole city that's in the middle of a lake with only like very, very thin paths to get in. So they're a whole nation that revolve around sacrifice. They have no problem letting people die, and it's like, oh, we need this whole place to live. But on the other hand, the Conquistadors also did a Last Stand battle strategy, which I did confirm and double check. It was actually something very popular that Napoleon Bonaparte also did, which first thing to do, burn all their own ships on that. So they forced themselves into a Last Stand. It's like we omitted our whole option to even retreat. So it's either we win or we're just, this is it. We had a good run.
Yeah, both historically and in video games, we do often see this commander force where they will burn their own method of escape, right? Warcraft 3 does it. Arthas burns his own ships and then blames it on mercenaries that he hires. Kind of a maybe not a classic example. That makes me feel old, but an older example at this point. Shout out to you Warcraft 3 players.
You age like a fine whiskey, Dane.
Yeah.
Don't you forget that.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, so the most common genre you'll see with that is kind of like the zombie movie, but not all the time. Like a kind of weird pivotal mistake is the to think about it like Dawn of the Dead, where everyone's holed up inside a mall. Classic scenario. Everyone's holed up inside of a mall, and they're trying to make sure that they're until there's a. But that's more of a survival thing than a Last Stand. Half of the movie, half of the storyline for that one is nobody's actually attacking them. They just have to hold out and wait and just wait on that one. So your genres can change and vary for that. I mean, with Starship Troopers, it was bugs as the thing. The key thing to The Last Stand is essentially you're holding out as a siege, and if your siege is going to be is one that you can casually just wait it out, it doesn't really count for that one.
I'm kind of trying to think of examples. Would you say, and I don't know if you've ever read it, but would you potentially say that Ender's Game could be an example, because he doesn't realize, again, spoilers, he doesn't realize that he's being pit up against, but I mean, he is a genius child. He was brought to the space station to be trained for the army, but all of the runs, like the practice runs that he was doing, he didn't realize was actually him commanding real armies to go fight against these like bug aliens. And then the very last one, it really was all leading up to this point where he is like gonna do his final test and he was gonna graduate, and he didn't realize that he actually took out like the queen of the aliens, which basically killed them all.
Depends on his strategy, really.
I mean, it was all it did kind of come down to him commanding like 3 ships.
Yeah.
And them having to like bust through them against just like wave after wave to try and get to the queen.
Yeah, that's the Zap Brannigan strategy. So, those who don't know the lore of Futurama, that's how the Zap Brannigan got his position. He just sent waves after waves of men until killbots finally turned off when they hit their kill limit. However, that is a last stand strategy, and it did work, and he technically won. Moral of the story, don't listen to Zap Brannigan's tactics. He's not good at it.
Wanted to circle back to something you said a minute ago, Leo. Waiting out a siege, I think, is a very viable tactic for the defenders. We see that historically a lot of the times where people involved in a siege will be like, we just got to make it to winter. Once winter comes, they'll run out of food. Their supply lines will be crap. We just have to make it to winter. And that's a pretty common theme I think we see. We just have to wait till X, right? We have to wait until reinforcements arrive. We have to wait until winter comes. We have to wait until our allies can get here. So I don't know that I necessarily agree that you can't have a waiting game as a last stand. I think maybe it does fall into this, and this might be a little bit too cerebral, but it kind of falls into this like pseudo last stand where like this is a potential last stand for sure, but if we can just wait till winter, if we can just wait till X, then we may be able to like survive this situation.
Oh, so like, yes, and here's why. So the reason why Dawn of the Dead is the example I want to bring up where it doesn't come out as a stand type of situation, they are waiting for the event of reinforcements. However, how they wait is by watching every video that they have in the mall. They hoard up all the food in the mall and just sort of hang out and chill. And part of the story is them just just hanging out for like about a month before I realize I don't think help's gonna come. But we've got food storages for like years down here, and we manage it all as we have enough fuel to run the generators for about a couple of years. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of zombie apocalypses, you could do worse.
You could do worse. That's the thing. Like, they didn't start worrying about it until they found out that there is another way in, and they didn't seal it up. And then it becomes them just trying to figure out a way to do it. Or in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, it was they got tired of waiting, of playing the waiting game, and their only ally is a guy who owns a gun store on the other side of the mall. And so they were coming up with the plan to go either we just go out in one last reign of glory, or we keep waiting until this waiting game is going to come up. Because at that point, though, in the story, they realize help is not coming, and that's a different take for that one.
True.
In a last stand situation, help is coming, or this is all we need to do to win. Yeah.
Sort of like that one level in Back 4 Blood.
Yep.
In the one level, you're inside I think it's a restaurant.
You're inside of a bar, which has the loudest, which you have to distract everybody in. Every monster out there.
You're trying to draw all the monsters to you by turning on the jukebox, but then you're also holding out as long as you can and taking them all out so that you can move on to the next part.
The point is keeping that jukebox a jamming.
Oh, when that thing turns off, you have to go turn it back on. We died so many times in that level. But that also kind of circles back to the Left 4 Dead finale levels. You are like, we need to get to this place to get out. And so every level that you're doing is leading up to the final stand or the last stand, where they're like, oh, the boat's on the way or the helicopter's coming, but you just need to hold out. And so you have ammo and healing items and the biggest, toughest monsters that you hate seeing just running you down. And so you're just trying to survive until help gets there.
Yeah. Back 4 Blood is a weirder example on that one because in the demo, that is one of the biggest places. In the full game, it only happens once, which is kind of sad.
It's the coolest level.
It's
But
one of the coolest levels. In
yeah, I think Left 4 Dead is a better example of that. But I think Back 4 Blood still follows kind of a similar track, because it's, again, a zombie game made by the same people where they're like, you got to get out. You're trying to get to the safe place.
I do have to say, anecdotally, I'm a little bit worried about the death of them all, just because we're not going to have any supplies there when we have to hole up in the zombie apocalypse, you know?
Right. You know, I want to take a step away from this mass amount of zombie talk that apparently has taken over this whole genre.
No, it's just the most common.
Zombies are a really good, like...
Zombies are a quick way to have. I need 1,000 monsters and I need them now. Here we go.
That's perfect.
You got zombies or war. Take your pick.
Anyway, Ben.
I do love Dane mentioning that, okay, a lot of them want to hold off until winter because that's going to be our friend. Unless what you're fighting against is vampires, like in 30 Days of Night.
Yes.
Very true.
To where, like, for those who haven't seen it, this whole thing takes place in a very, very, very north town in Alaska, where every now and then they will literally go weeks, maybe even months with no sunlight because that's just how the earth tilts. Now, in 30 Days of Night, they have a whole horde of vampires coming in. And apparently one sneaky squirrel who thought that he was going to let him join, that didn't happen. But he made sure that no one had any option to come in or come out. So sled dogs are gone. Communications are all gone. And so now they're all trying to survive against this huge horde of very coordinated groups of vampires, and just trying to think, how are we going to go against this? Because our greatest advantage is we know this town and we know this cold. They beat us in everything else, though.
There's kind of not going with the zombies again. There is a video game called House of Ashes, part of the Dark Pictures anthology, and they're alien vampires.
Oh, how does it just keep getting worse?
And they are like, they can't be out in the sunlight, and so when you get out from this underground area, everyone's so relieved, and they're like, oh my god, we're safe, it's gonna be fine, the helicopter's on its way to come get us. And then an eclipse happens, and they tell you at the beginning of the game that this eclipse is gonna happen, and then it happens right as they get out, and then these vampire aliens come up, and you have to hold the characters. If you kept them all alive up to this point, there's 5 of them, and they actually do a whole Avengers style like circle around them while they get their weapons ready with the flares and stuff. And you have a 6-minute countdown that you actually have to survive for the full 6 minutes of the eclipse, and then when it starts moving off and the sun shines, then the monsters all start dying.
I do find it interesting that this isn't the first time I've heard about alien vampires. Like, Plan 9 from Outer Space is a terrible movie, but it's classic, and it deals with alien vampires. That's crazy.
If I had the nickel for every time I had
You have 2, which isn't a lot.
It's weird it happened twice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are where we have these last stand story type things. That is basically when we get to those points for it, that's where both your climax and both the roughest part of the thing. In another vampire last stand, man, this happens more often to vampires than I thought.
You're welcome.
From Dusk Till Dawn. Now, this is also why I give you the point of time isn't the relative point that makes a last stand. Anybody who's seen Dusk Till Dawn will let you know the first I think it's almost over half of that film is nothing but a heist movie that's gone wrong, and they're trying to just walk away from this thing. It's not until they get to the bar at almost the end of the movie where now we're just switching genres for that last stand. The important thing for that, though, is that a horde is coming. There is a large group of them for that one, because if that's the case, that's what distributes it from being. That's what changes it from an assault or a last stand sort of situation from like a typical monster movie. Like Tremors is them holding out in a town, but it's really just 3 monsters to worry about.
That's enough. We don't need more.
I don't want any more than that.
Kevin Bacon worked hard, okay?
Man, just one of those things were bad enough. And then they evolved like Pokemon.
What do you think about like a sort of? It's not a last stand from the hero's perspective, but it is from the villains. Films like John Wick or the Blade series, where it's one aggressor coming through and just it is the last stand for the villains. But we're kind of rooting for their last stand to fail.
So that's more of a. To be fair, with John Wick, it's more of you're watching Jason Voorhees from Jason's point of view.
Yeah.
Oh,
like Jason's the monster.
Yeah,
like,
but
I think there's like a possibly better example of that would be, we were actually talking about it earlier, the movie Nobody, because at the very end of the movie, the father, the grandfather, and I think the son, or the father and the grandfather and somebody else, they're actually holed up in a warehouse while the enemy, like mafia or something, it's been a minute since I've seen it, but they're like, so the three protagonists that you're rooting for are holed up in a building, and they're trying to like, they're being invaded on by the enemies, and then as the enemies come in, they're trying to like push them back or take them out. And if you haven't seen that movie, it's really good, but I think that might be a really good example.
Yeah, so that's a good example, because the thing is that the force has to be large in number, not large in strength.
And there's a lot of these guys.
Because that's what makes the difference for it. It's because they can go down quickly, but there's more coming of them.
Does it have to be though? Do you think?
I think it does, or else we have the Blob as a situation.
I mean, isn't the Blob kind of a last stand? The army is holding out as, or like, I guess.
I feel like that will just turn to like a big monster movie. So that honestly, I would put that almost similar to like one step under a kaiju film, where it's like everyone's trying to beat this one great beast or boogeyman of a person.
But is that not a last stand for them trying to defeat the monster?
Okay, what if we have a movie where it's a group of people trying to hold out against every monster from monster movies?
That's just Monster Squad.
That would be probably one of the worst last stands you could go through. It's like, all right, we got to wait for the sun. What about the other guys? Well, we're screwed now.
Or Cabin in the Woods. I think you just described Cabin in the Woods.
That's a good one.
No, that would be Cabin Woods. Yes, there we go.
Good one.
But no, Cabin in the Woods at the end, that I guess would be a last stand.
Well, and you've got like, I think it's two last stands, because the teens or post-teens, I get college students in the cabin
having got on this one,
having a bunch of like, they don't even realize, but there's like monsters and stuff that are coming after them, and then after that, then there's the monsters in the underground facility.
and a bunch of scientists taking bets on, so which last stand scenario do you think we should go with on this? Like, do you think you're going to get the weird box, or are we going to get weird lake clowns?
Mermaids. Always mermaids.
Always mermaids.
Mermaids are always the weirdest.
Those are
See, I'm going to
so
stick with the redneck zombies, which are different than the regular zombies. There's a world difference.
That movie is so good.
Oh,
It
yeah.
really is.
But I would say yes, that's the last stand on the basis of, but it's in a weird take, because you have the last stand isn't the protagonists in that one.
Yeah, you kind of aren't rooting for those guys.
Yeah.
They kind of suck.
It's genre bending in a way.
It's genre bending, yes.
Well, it's kind of...
But also, that's the point of Cabin in the Woods, if you know what
True.
that is.
Right.
True.
So that works out.
Well, they don't... we don't like those guys because they're killing the protagonists, but also they're trying to stave off an evil ancient god. So, like... Maybe they're not so bad.
No, I will say probably a big one that leads up to a last stand would be Marvel's Endgame. Specifically Endgame and not Infinity War. And here's why I believe why. Because Infinity War, it's literally, this one bad guy is just going from squad to squad to squad and just like, different multi-battles, but they're all failing. But none of them were actually together as a full last stand until, well, they decide we need to try this again, but now it's a full-on make it or break it, because they know how bad these odds are.
Yeah, so that's the difference, especially for Endgame. In Endgame, they know what happens if Thanos gets the glove a second time, because they experienced it the first time. So there is no escape. There is defend the stupid old-timey van that's barely broken down and still plays La Cucaracha for no real reason. Oh. But yeah, hold out until we can jumpstart a van is just kind of a weird take for that one.
Ooh, never mind.
That sounds like a Left 4 Dead level to me.
Yeah.
But one of the ones I was thinking of dealing with the supernatural, but that aren't zombies or the undead per se. 13th Warrior is probably one of my favorite movies. 1999, loosely based off Beowulf, very loosely. But they're fighting a creature. These Vikings are fighting a creature and they're trying to hold out and hopefully defeat the creature. And so I think for the first half of that film, I would say it's probably, I would say, a Last Stand sort of scenario. Wouldn't you?
First, at the beginning,
Yeah.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that's how it also, they have another one at the end of the movie too.
They do, yeah. They kind of track the beast to its lair and seek to destroy it inside of its own lair. So I guess either way, it's either a last stand for our heroes or a last stand for the creature in some way.
Well, no. So like the thing is that they have to hold out until they take out the primary target. Everybody else has to hold a line until they can do it.
That's true.
So like that's a case where you have multiples of these because at any point in time, it's a make for break point for it. There's no retreat for them.
Yeah.
There's no and there's also no backup for our heroes on that one. That is it. They start with 13. If all 13 don't make it to the end, we're donezo. But also all 13 know what they're doing and they're like, know what they're doing, what they signed up for. Like, yeah, we're here till except for our main protagonist. Yeah, you're here until this job is either over with one way or another. It's a weird career move.
I think one Last Stand I enjoyed for the end of a series called Maya and the Three was one where they discovered it had to be a last stand, but they didn't know until they thought, oh, I think this is the prophecy. So this is the whole thing based on like a Mayan princess trying to find warriors from other like Mesoamerican nations. So they get a shaman from the islands. They get a Puma warrior from Machu Picchu. They find an Aztec archer. And they're all thinking like, okay, we got to fight the gods on this. And it's like, but we're the prophecy. So we go down all the way to Xibalba, which is their underworld, and think, yeah, we can totally take on gods. These are 4 teenagers, by the way. So
Do they have attitude?
These are 4 Latin teenagers. Of course they have attitude.
Well, then they'll be fine.
Oh, yeah. So, but no, that one quickly became a last stand because they knew exactly, okay, we cannot fight all these gods. And on their way to escape, their buddy Pichu, who's the Puma warrior, voiced by Gabriel Iglesias, by the way, did not know that until later. But he jumps off the whole thing and makes them run and forces his own last stand and just like, tries to take on the gods temporarily so his friends can escape. Like, oh, that sucks. But then when they finally get out, they're all thinking, okay, we're going to get covered in gods. This is going to suck. But then they realize, what if it's not us, but specifically we need to unite our nations together to do this. And so they go over and try to do a huge plea. And all these guys are like the black sheeps of all their nations. So to have them come by and it's like, bro, we're all screwed unless we all work together. And so in the big final one, you literally have all 4 of those ones together with the gods coming forth. Like, okay, we're going to an even battle. But now they're bringing out like giant stone mechas because they can. And then these shamans are also doing it because why not? And thought, okay, the last stand's starting to come by, and it's like make it or break it. God, I swear like half the people in that whole thing die, which includes half of the protagonists as well. That is a hell of a last stand right there. But
last stands aren't pretty.
Oh yeah. No, this one became even prettier because they're being the bad guys. So Miklan, the big baddie of that, summons the Unholy Army, which is a bunch of conquistador skeletons. They went there, and I loved every bit of it. But my goodness, that it just kept getting worse. So like, all right, cool. The gods weren't bad. Now we got gods and a horde of conquistador zombies. We got this. We're trying to do it. No,
Zombies again.
Always zombies.
Oh, don't worry, because we go beyond zombies because Miklan
Vampires.
is very. Nope. So
Frankenstein's?
Oh no.
Ooh.
So
Wolfman?
let's talk about a mega god. So
A mega god. Okay.
so Miklan does is he steals the hearts of all the gods he brought, eats them, absorbs all their power, and becomes the world serpent. And it's like, well, this last stand turned to a kaiju film with 2 snake heads.
Which I maintain is still a last stand, just for the record.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that one led up to that. That was literally just like, how many last stands can we put in? Like, let's put in all the genres. Like any genre you can think of. We got the zombies, we got the mechas, we got the gods.
And what is this?
Maya and the 3. It's only 9 episodes on Netflix.
Is it
Check
an
it out.
anime or is it a?
Huh?
Is it a
Cartoon?
anime?
Oh yeah, it's a cartoon.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So with that being said,
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So
So with that being said, though, Last Stands are going to be done pretty interestingly. Like the biggest takeaway from that one is if Last Stand is done very well, you feel for your protagonist, you feel for your for this ever pending doom that's on its way. But so it takes a lot of skill to write a story with a Last Stand on it. If you go the other way though, and you don't think your story all the way through for Last Stand, you kind of get like Legion, which is a movie not a whole lot of people watched, and it's a good reason why.
It's not very good.
No, it's not.
I regret that it's in my voodoo library.
Forever. Those things are forever.
Forever.
But also, that one's Angels. Kinda.
Sort of.
Sort of.
It wishes it
Angel
was
adjacent.
Angels.
Angel adjacent. Yeah.
It wishes it was as cool as Angel.
You know, I think that with all these stories that we've been talking about today, video games, movies, etc., I think I find it fascinating personally. I've got a little bit of a historical background, and one of the things that I always like to think about, there's a movie made about it, which is okay, it's fine. The Last Samurai, the Battle of Shirayama, where Saigo Takamori tries to defeat. It's the Satsuma Rebellion, and Saigo Takamori tries to defeat the imperial forces of his own nation, and inevitably fails. I mean, The Last Samurai is a fine film, but I do think it's really interesting where, you know, we have a lot of historical precedent for these Last Stands, or at least stories of these Last Stands, and that does translate into our fiction, into our stories. You know, I've done Last Stands in Dungeons and Dragons. I've done Last Stands in video games and seen it in movies and books. I do think there is something about it that is, I don't know, tragically romantic.
Yep.
Yeah, because so this is where it becomes different from like a person who's just out for their own vendetta. There is a bottle of hope that says that that if we can make it through the night, that's it. We're done. The Crusades had that for whoever controlled Jerusalem at the time. Hold out the siege until we get to the end. And it's always hope will come. That's the idea behind that. Or once we get to the end part of it, it's over. That's it. We only have to last. And that's sort of like just the big takeaway for it. So in the last couple of minutes of this, I want to leave it out to this. If you were to recommend someone, whether it's the Last Stand, film, story, game, whatever, which one would you go with? For me, the 1990s classic Tales from the Crypt, Demonknight. That is a fun movie, and it's an amazing film. But it's all about holding out until morning.
As he was saying earlier with our friend, it's Billy Zane at his most Billy Zanest.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
That's true.
That and Zoolander.
All right. Anybody else want to take it away real quick? Got a couple minutes left.
I would just once again recommend Nobody with Bob Odenkirk.
Mm-hmm.
That one's a really fun one. And Cabin in the Woods if you haven't seen it. But Nobody with Bob Odenkirk. That one's really fun to me.
The movie's Nobody, not Nobody with but Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what did Bob do to you?
It's called Nobody. Because who is he? He's nobody.
All right.
No, I'd probably still stick with 30 Days a Night. That one is
good.
Definitely one of my like top 10 horror movies of all times, and I'll always go back to it for like a nice feel good.
Ooh, I have to recommend you a movie.
Oh, you know,
it's not a feel good movie, but it's good.
No, it makes me feel. Man, 30 Days a Night doesn't feel good either. We saw a protagonist die after the greatest fist punch through another vampire's mouth.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That is a great
But
movie.
that was, you know, I think one thing with Last Stand is like, for a big make it or break it, there may always be that one person that's like, we'll always make the ultimate sacrifice on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, you know, seeing the team come together, learning about them, learning about their flaws, their successes, their failures, and then seeing that kind of swept away in the pursuit of the defense of a basically helpless village. I don't know, it just always gets me. It's just right in the feels.
It's a good classic for a reason.
So good. I watch it about every year.
Mm-hmm. I think I watched it again like just a couple of months ago.
It's so good.
It's so good.
I've never seen it.
You know, to be honest, some people find it boring, and I get it. But like for me, it's the perfect movie.
I mean, I've just never seen it, so I have no opinion.
I mean, I will watch it again.
You know, I think Gaming Theaters Presents needs to get together and have our own sit-down movie night now.
I hate that
movie
idea.
night.
So yeah,
Seven Samurai though.
I'm down.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
we go. See, the negotiation always wins.
Oh yeah.
You just have to follow. Just remember, it's a 3-hour movie. Hold on.
It's like
Hold on.
we can have intermission. It's like
Yeah.
we just need to get from point A to point B, but at least we stay in the
You know
same
what?
place.
Let's mod Stardew Valley, and we'll do a Last Stand Stardew Valley Island together. Okay, and put zombies in.
We better stream that thing because I'm going to go that far. Is like that.
That just sounds
I'll
like
make
a
it
weird
happen.
reality show.
No, it'll be the four of us.
Stardew Island.
It'll be the four of us on a farm, and I'll
Stardew
mod
Island.
zombies in so that we can
Like-
just constantly be trying to protect our crops.
Gaming Theaters presents Stardew Valley Survival.
Liz, I think that's just Plants vs Zombies.
Yeah.
I think you
that
just
one's
described
also
Which
really
is
fun.
also
Yeah.
Last Stand too.
but
Such a
this
fun
one
game.
you can get your wifey or husbando.
I'm gonna marry Shane.
Oh.
I know. I'll love myself better than that.
We understand we all have our toxicals we really like, so
So with that being said, this is about the end of our show. Now we're all in various different social medias, from Instagram to on Blue Sky, and hit us up. Let us know in the comments and such what you guys think of the of a Last Stand. What's a good Last Stand that you would recommend to somebody?
Yeah, did we miss any that were like pivotal or
No, dude.
your favorite Last Stand? That's a weird way to say it. but-
Yeah.
it's like recommend one of your favorite Last Stand things. Maybe we'll have our own little theater party for that too.
All right.
All right, but this is GTP
Signing off.
signing off.
Log it out.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
We did it.
Was there
No,
any-
this emails.
Was there any doubt? Did you guys go into this expecting to be a Last Stand for us?
Gaming Theater Podcast is hosted, created, produced, and edited by Leo Garcia, the Geek Scorpio. Our music is A Drinking Game, stock media provided by Stormwave Audio /Pond5. Our cover art is by Adam Parker. You can find him at ParkerGFX on Twitter. If you want to send us some money to help with these episodes, you can do so at patreon.com/gamingtheaterpresents. Want to send support that doesn't hit your wallet? Please leave a review with wherever you hear your podcasts and share our podcast with your friends. It really helps out. Thank you for listening.